What's up, everyone? Welcome back to StrangeCast, Player One Better World's Life is Strange podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Adnan. My co-host Adam is here. Adam, you here?
I'm here. I didn't tell Adnan this off camera, but I sliced my finger open this week, and it really hurts.
Oh, well, I almost called myself Adam when I introduced that. Then I was like, I had to pause for a second. I was like, actually, no,
wait a second.
A bit too much of a mix-up. But oh yes, that sounds awful as well to your finger.
Yeah, the worst part was it wasn't at my job; it was my own home.
Oh dear.
Yeah. So just as dumb, very stupid, but it's healing now, so we're good.
We're healing. That's a good part of the message. We'll start with we're healing. I know, as always, before we start as well, I do ask if you can possibly please to subscribe, drop a like, turn on notifications, and comment as well, and share with your friends. Helps keep us with our content, especially with especially with Player One vs World hitting 1,000 subscribers plus, and 50% plus of the traffic comes from outside sources. So if you do regularly come here, do consider dropping us a subscribe. It helps us build our following. And StrangeCast is available on all podcast services. So it's available on Apple Podcasts. It's available on Spotify with the video version, and all other podcast services. So you can check that out. Adam, by the way, as well, before we came on this episode, I actually decided to look on Spotify because we use Anchor for context to distribute the podcast, and Anchor is powered by Spotify, and Spotify gives us analysis of like the podcast and how it runs. We have 105 followers. So it's gone up since I think we last spoke, which is it's about 4+ since then. And what I found really interesting was, obviously, with Anchor, we have about 3,000 plus plays across all podcast episodes, and that's from every source. But with like the Spotify analytics, our audience from Spotify, 50% plus is non-binary.
Oh,
which is
wow.
Which was when I saw that, I was like, that is crazy for a start, because non-binary for us was about 10%, I think, when we just signed up to Anchor. And, specifically through Spotify, it was like less than 10%. I think we had like less than 10%, and they went up to about 17%. And then when I checked just before we came on, and this counts just purely for all the Spotify clicks that we have through there, 50% plus is non-binary people who listen to our podcast. I was like, that is just wow. I was like, it was one of those stats that just blew my mind, which I was like, I'm glad that people do listen to it, however you identify yourself. And I'm glad that you actually stick around for our podcast.
And welcome. Well, we love you, and hope you're living your best truth.
That's the best way of it. I couldn't describe it any better. So but I just want to share that as well. Just really, really cool statistics to see. So before we start as well, Life After Strange is out with Trey Hutch.
And it was a banger. Hey, watch her on YouTube. You need to watch it now. Do it. Wait, is my slice finger? Nope, you can't really see the slice, so you're good. Go watch it, silly goose. But that's just my message. Yeah.
Okay. That's it. So I was going to put that out as well, because obviously this podcast service is available on podcast services. This podcast is available on all podcast services, but obviously Life After Strange it's a YouTube exclusive. So if you do listen through on podcast services, you can come to our YouTube channel. You'll see that there. So we have Trey Hutch, who played True North from Life is Strange Before Storm. Really cool interview. First one of 2023. Hopefully we can get some more done this year. It's been a long process.
It was a really good interview. I was going to tell you that I thought it was, you got some really good, honest answers out of Trey. It was probably my favorite one since you interviewed the voice actress behind Karen. I'm trying
Jolene.
Yeah, probably one of the most interesting since Jolene.
Right, so okay, let me just acknowledge. You haven't found any other episode interesting.
No, they were all interesting.
Episode 2 to episode 30.
I'm just saying. I was like, it was a really good one. Like, I thought you got some really good, honest answers out of Trey. They were all very interesting. Like, every Life After Strange is good. One, because my theme music is behind it, and two,
of course,
I think you get some good, honest answers. But this one, he talked about how he wanted his character to have a different attitude, a different ending. You got to hear some honest feedback of like, man, I really wish my character, even like how he performed, like he wish, like I don't want to give it too much away, but like he had some complaints of how he performed. I thought it was a really good, honest interview, and I think it was it's well worth anybody who's a fan of this podcast, someone to watch it. So I thought it was really well said.
No, thank you. Glad you enjoyed it. Yeah, it's an interesting. Like each interview is always quite interesting in Life After Strange. Like what always really blew my mind, especially with this year, is when I scrolled through and like looked at all the interviews. 'Cause obviously, like as I said, I never thought that 30 actors would ever turn up from this series on this channel to like do the interviews. It's just it seemed like almost an impossible task. And then kind of like just seeing all the people I've spoken to, like it's different obviously with each person you talk to, and it's like you get different kind of like how much they talk about themselves, what they want to talk about, and it's like as you see like the tones are different with people and how they feel, and it's each to their own for each person as well, mainly. And then like some of the episodes as well, like when you like really like the deep ones with like some of the people that you spoke about, like Jolene, that's like one of the more popular Life After Strange episodes. But then some of my other favorite ones I've done as well, like they don't have anywhere near as much views, and it's like damn, like. And I like really enjoy like talking to some of those people, like, and then some of them have like blown expectations. I think the top 3 off the top of my head, I think it's Hannah, obviously the first episode that we ever did,
of course, yeah.
Then I was gonna say it's Kylie's, but
I was
don't
gonna
think
say
it is.
Kylie. I really liked her interview. That was a great one.
But I don't think it's actually Kylie's that's the second most popular now. It might still be. I think it is. I think it's still the second most popular after the Hannah one. And then it's the Gabriella Hirsch one, which is like
okay, that makes sense.
Too. Well, it was surprising because I thought it would do well, but I didn't think it would do as strongly as it has. Like it's in the same bracket as those ones in terms of like the views it's got. Like it's got thousands and thousands of views. Speaking of which, let's actually just quickly pull into that because I'll pull it up here.
Yeah, just an interesting fact. Because like I said, I loved your interviews with Anastasia. I loved the interviews, of course, with Erica Moore. Oh, Stace, yeah, like all of them were great, but I think Trey brought a different kind of energy into the interview that not a lot of other guests gave you. It's not to say anyone was worse. I just thought it was really interesting to listen to.
Yeah, it was really interesting. As I said, like some of those, like Stace is great. I love Erica Murray. They're all thingy, but yeah, in fact, actually, the Gabriella Hirsch interview is more popular than the Kylie Brown interview.
Really?
Which does blow up. Like so, the 6 most popular interviews in Life After Strange to date. The Hannah Tell one is number 1 with 19,000 views, which is mind-boggling. The Gabriella Hirsch interview is second with 8.6k. Kylie Brown is after that with 7.6k. Then it's the Gonzalo Martin one, which is 4k. Then it's the Nick Schreiner one, which is 2.8k. And then it's the Diane Hutton one, which is 2.3k.
I miss Diane. I had her twice on. Yeah, I miss talking to her. I need to contact her back. But
yeah, I need to get her back on here as well easily.
Yeah, definitely.
It's one of those. But yeah, just looking at some of the episodes, it is as you said, like quite interesting. Like Erica Moore's 1.4k. The Katy Bentz one, which one is the first one's 1.6. And the one after it is 455. It's like varying like with each one, but it's like some of these, I love some of these interviews. Like my Joe Ockman one that I've been in there is so cool. Nick Apostolidis is really good as well. The Amador one, which is less than 1,000. Like I'm like, damn, like some of these are really good. But as I said, this is not me like saying, oh, I wish I had more channel views. I just find it interesting how like what's popular, what isn't popular. Or like how many views it's got. Obviously, it depends on how long it's been out and stuff. But
sure,
crazy nonetheless. But yeah, as I said, that's kind of just start things off, which is that Life After Strange is back. It's with Trey Hutch. So do check that out. It's on YouTube. And I hope you enjoy that. So with this episode, we kind of changed things up because we had a long talk before this call anyway.
Yeah.
And me and Adam have decided to change the format up a little bit, where there's like one main topic, and then also we got one news topic and one Adam's impressions on Steph's story, which I'll come on to. I haven't listened to it myself yet. It's pending, but I thought we'd just kick off with the news first. And then also in the main topic, we'll talk about in general stuff as well. But we'll kick off with news first. So, not to bore you, and I always try not to do this. This is kind of like a business review from Don't Nod. We kind of like got a little bit of detail, and I'm not going to go into the stocks and the finances and stuff because it's going to bore the hell out of you. But there's kind of like certain conversations to be had with.
This is your British coming outs.
Yeah. Well, this is something that I saw with Don't Nod here, which is kind of like, which will give you an idea of what's been happening. Because obviously, as we said, the studio's not had a major release since Twin Mirror, which was 2020. 2020.
Twin Mirror, yes, was 2020. Yes.
2020, late 2020. So it was like that's.
I think it was like June 2020. Yes.
Was it not after? Tell me why.
Now I don't know. No, I don't know.
I have a funny feeling it was like November 2020.
Yeah, you're probably right. Right.
Because
no.
Tell me why it came out in August, if I remember correctly, on the Xbox. On that
Twin
Xbox.
Mirror. Yeah, let me just check real quick. I just replayed that game, and I still think it's a decent game to replay. Release date 2020. Great. Thanks, Google. Twin Mirror Wikipedia. Released on December 1st, 2020? Was it really that late? Really? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, interesting. Yeah. Very interesting.
With this news story, I wanted to read out one section, which was the section which Donut has released in its review, which is it says bold 2023-2025 release cycle. Yes. So I'll just read out what it says here, which is after 2 consecutive years focusing on capital expenditure, international rollout, and the implementation of its integrated developer publisher model, Don't Nod begins 2023 with 2 new games scheduled for release during the financial year. Harmony, The Fall of Rivia, a self-published game, and Banishes Goes to New Eden in partnership with Focus Entertainment. Meanwhile, Don't Nod is continuing to develop upcoming projects in its rich 2023-2025 pipeline, comprising of 6 intellectual properties with 4 developed in-house and 2 externally, Studio Tolima and Tiny Ball Studios, as it has. Don't Nod confirms its 2025 its post-2025 development strategy focusing on ramping up production capacity in action RPG, a proven segment with strong sales potentials, with a successful asset already in its portfolio, i.e. Vampire, and a new intellectual property title, Banishes. Don't Nod is developing a new game in-house, Project 12, as we spoke about. I believe that was last episode? Last episode?
Yes. No... last episode or the episode before that?
One of the most 2 recent.
Yes.
Maybe the one before it, I think.
Yeah, I think before, yeah.
Which will boost value creation, accelerating which will boost value creation, and then also accelerating high-level talent recruitment to expend internal expertise in the marketing and publishing departments while pursuing distribution partnership and safeguard revenues. So that was just kind of like the main focus I wanted to take apart from it. There was one more interesting part, which I'll bring up here, which was controlled ramp up of development. There's a bit of financial from Don't Nod, but it says here as well, revenues from Gerda, a Flame in Winter, and back catalogue sales totaling 0.9 million euros in 2022, including a challenging base effect between 2021 and 2022, in brackets, Twin Mirror guaranteed minimum amounts. Revenues from development operations up 28.3%, driven by the ramp up of Banishes, Ghost New Eden in partnership with Focus Entertainment, scheduled for release of 2023. A 42% increase in increased capitalized production to 23 million euros, reflecting the rich 2022-2025 lineup comprising of 8 games under development. So there's like a lot of, as I said, like a lot of jargon in terms of like to the normal kind of person. But I kind of wanted to bring that up with Adam because like it kind of gives you again, we have a more of a clear line because it's been very quiet for Don't Nod since the Twin Mirror release. We know that they've been developing games in-house. They've been publishing from smaller studios. They've been externally recruiting for, obviously, the Montreal studio is a big one example. They've been externally heavily recruited for that. And on top of that,
recruited me yet, unfortunately.
Not yet. That'll come in that'll come in due course. But they're they're basically doing a lot of things, and Banishes seems to have like a lot of significance, which in the same way as Vampire did in terms of sales, I imagine they're putting a strong focus on. But also kind of like gives you an idea that beyond 2025, again, this Project 12 has popped up saying that the studio's pipeline is big in terms of what they're trying to do, and there's a kind of big focus on, like as it says here, safeguard revenues, pursuing distribution partnerships or maybe even more collaborations potentially, expand internal expertise in the marketing and publishing departments. We spoke about that during the Oscar Gilbert interview. I said that the studio really needs to kind of have a really big marketing team to sell these games to big outlets, because it's just going to be a Don't Nod game. It's not going to be, Square Enix is dealing with the PR or the marketing. It's not going to have big kind of like publishers kind of like pushing out games, except for the Focus one. So it's like a lot of effort that's going to be have to put on Don't Nod's place to kind of be to kind of like drill home a lot of this. So I kind of wanted to bring that up because it's like, as I said, it kind of gives you a clear idea of where Don't Nod goes from here. And I think like we just haven't seen much since then because they've been heavily developing, but this is a really big period for them, these 3 years from now up to about 2026 when we see hopefully Project 12 as well. Like there's a lot of it will tell you where Don't Nod goes from here for 3 years. Like we spoke about it when we did the shares thing, and I said when we were talking about it being undervalued, it's like, can it potentially be the next big publisher? Can it be? And like these 3 years might even help define that. That might kind of be the setting stone of where Don't Nod goes.
Yes, I think that there's a lot of promise, and I think there's a lot of growth. There's a lot of business in these words that are business and good. I was following what you were saying, but it's just like, I was like, yes,
it's heavy,
percentage, growth, the euros, all good. Peanut butter. Wait, was peanut butter part of this?
Peanut butter was not part of it.
There's no peanut butter in stocks.
No,
it's some bullshit. No, I just think that, like, again, we're starting to see it, and like you're starting to see the growth with Don't Nod and the promise, and you're starting to see that the stock is starting to like gain value. And this is what we've been saying since like day one when we talked about how Don't Nod is going to be a publisher. It's a slow growth, but they're here for the long run. And we were talking about this before we started recording, that if you want to be a creative, it's a tough hill. It's a tough battle. It's a giant mountain you have to climb slowly and surely. And sometimes it's going to take a lot of work and a lot of time. But guess what? If you put in the time, put in the effort, we're starting to see the growth. As long as they don't get too cocky and everything starts to crumble. But it starts to sound like that, like, yeah, they're starting to plant their foot in this industry, and they're going to become the new EA in 10 years' time,
Yeah, I mean, it's a big ask of like where the studio goes from here, because like you've seen it with other developers doing it. Like Quantic Dream has like kind of like got a bit of a head start on them for this. But there's big ambitions like Quantic Dream, and I'm using them as an example because it's also a French developer. It's kind of like been venturing into different areas. It's trying to be a bigger one. Like, like some studios are fortunate to be in a really great position. Like, you look at the stuff like Rockstars, for example. Like, they don't need to put a GTA out every year. It's like there's no need for it now because they make so much money. Like, they're very comfortable as a studio, and it's like they're one example compared to like the other ones that fall apart, the ones that kind of struggle. And it's like we're talking about a company with Don't Nod, for example, that a better part of like 10 years ago when Remember Me was there, they almost were on the brink of financial collapse because of how badly that title did for them in terms of commercial success, and was such a big risk for them. The fact that they kind of like pulled themselves back out from Don't Nod. You can see why they're being careful. Like, as you said, like they're not going to do, when you said like, unless they do something stupid, they're just not going to do it because like they're not going to do,
because they're being smart about everything.
That's why that's why they took Porter Play on, and they're taking Tiny Bull and stuff. Like, they're not going to go out there and be like, I don't know, like, let's say like they're not going to go to like a third party developer and be like, like a third party developer and be like, oh, let's fund their game, and then tomorrow it financially collapses, like
exactly.
struggles and stuff, because like that's why they can take the hit on Twin Mirror. Like, Twin Mirror wasn't a commercial success by their definition as well. And it's like for them, it's not that necessarily the bad issue, because like they still have royalties coming from like Vampire, from I assume from Life is Strange, and then also other games that they're making as well. They can make up for the footfall and like where money has been lost. So as I said, like even with some of the games as well, like with the ones that they're publishing from this pipeline of games, like Harmony as well. Like Harmony's like a really hard pitch for a lot of developers. Like, is anyone really going to take a pitch on it? But saying Forspoken got a $100 million budget, I think like anything can get budgeted at this point. But Like how many does it strike me as game where it's like a lot of developers are going to take the risk on it, and even with like obviously we have this podcast, we have like a lot of things thankful for Life is Strange, but Life is Strange was a hard pitch. You know, not many people are going to be willing to put their neck out on it, and Square Enix did decide to do what other publishers had turned down from with Don't Know, and they took on the project. So it's like, yeah, Don't Know's an ambitious studio, so it's like it's kind of like interesting just to see how this kind of like folds out in their business review, because we'll keep talking about this in the future. I don't really want to bore you on the financial side, because like if you're not interested, not interested. But like if you're not interested in like the business side, then that's fine. But it's like the fiscal reports that each company puts out, especially with like Don't Know, because it's an IPO, like, you know, it's listed on its stocks, because you can buy stocks, but in its financial reviews, it'll tell you what's going to happen with the company. It's going to tell you what the pipeline is and stuff like that, what they're working on, where the cash flow is, and you see, like, obviously you see places like Tencent and whoever else are buying big stakes in Don't Know, but you know, it could pay off if Don't Know turns out to be the next big publisher. You know, like you just hit a big tenfold. Like, and I say that in the sense that, you know, people looked at EA 10 years ago, and like, I think like when I was reading articles, like EA was trading at $19 in the stock market, and it's currently as of Friday when I checked, it was trading at $119. So if you bought it 10 years ago and you held it for $19 at X amount of stock, you made a lot of money.
Yeah.
And not to mention on top of the dividends they pay, but like, you know, you're making money on it. And Don't Know, it's currently, it was like €8, €9 or something. And imagine if that goes to like €80 and €90 in the next couple of like years.
Yes.
By the way, do not go and buy it because I said that. Do your own research. This is not financial advice, just extra stress that. But
especially don't get business advice from me. I will buy anything that you put in front of me. I'm actually about to buy some new shoes, and I don't need new shoes, but I'm buying new shoes. I'm not good business. Buy some new shoes. I'm going to. It's a good sale. It's a good sale. I'm just saying. I
got some new shoes today. I got some very nice running shoes today. Yeah, my brother bought them for me. It's my birthday on the 9th of April, for anyone wondering. And I had a surprise party thrown to me today, and my brother bought me some really expensive running shoes, which I said to him, I sent him like a really cheap end of night shoes. I was like, just buy me these. I'm happy with these. But he bought me some really expensive running shoes, which I'm very happy for. Nice. But yes, I know how you feel about shoes.
They're going to be the 4th skate shoe that are going to be in it, and it hasn't even stopped snowing here. I can't even go skate, and it's just like, I'm just piling on shoes while the snow keeps piling on over here in North Dakota. But yeah, we're supposed to get 18 inches of snow this week, so that's nice.
Christ.
Yeah, fucking hate it. I mean, I freaking hate it. I'm so tired of snow.
Before we move on to the next topic, anyway, like one of the things I saw wild was on the TikTok. I can't remember where she was. This woman, she basically she took a bowl of like water, like hot water.
Yes.
Went outside, opened the door, and then chucked it, and it turned into ice. Like. Yeah, and it was so crazy. I was like, what? I was like, how cold is it where you're living? He's like, do you live in an igloo? Like
negative 45 degrees Celsius or negative 45 degree Fahrenheit wind chills, dude. It's insane out here. But like, it's starting to warm up, but we're gonna get some more snow. So that's great for people who like to be outside. It's crazy. Yeah.
Do you know? Have you ever seen a Tesla car?
Have I seen a Tesla car out here?
Yeah.
No, I would actually judge them.
I know. Well, I know they're really popular in obviously Cali, but like I saw someone when it got really cold and stuff, like because Tesla cars, like when you open the door handle, you have to like push it in and then it opens up. So it's like not just a normal kind of like door handle. And there's a video on TikTok where someone's like done that, and it's like frozen over the car. So basically, you couldn't open the car up until it defrosted.
Yeah, there's sometimes I can't open my mailbox because it's so cold. Like it froze.
Yeah,
like I can't open it.
So basically, what happened with it as well was that the Tesla team had to like update it as well. So basically, through the app, you could open the car, because otherwise you'd be stuck with the car that it would be frozen, so you couldn't open the door handle. I was like, a little bit of a flawed design there, but you know, as I said, but as we will move on from this because we were led up. We've gone down a different road. So. This is going to be our last topic before the main topic / whatever we do. So it's not really a news topic. We have, news sort of. Basically, Steph's story is out. The Rosiee Thor, Life is Strange prose novel about Steph Gingrich. is out, and also the audiobook is out as well, featuring none other than Katy Bentz, The Life is Strange, True Colors, and Before Storm actor reprising her role for the audiobook. So, for discretionary reasons, I have not bought this yet. I've just been busy, as you'll find out in a little bit. Been very busy with things, and I just haven't been able to pick it up. I probably won't pick up the prose novel yet. I'll probably pick up the audiobook first, which is my main priority, but I haven't. But because I have Adam here, which is the main thing, Adam has done his due diligence, and he has listened to the audiobook. 8 hours of Katy Bentz goodness. So Adam, first things first. What's that, sorry? 8.5?
8.5 hours.
Damn.
Yes, 8 hours and 36 minutes.
Well, yeah. 8 hours. 8 hours and 36 minutes of Katy Bentz.
You know, the first thing I'm going to say, though, is that, like, sometimes when I do listen to an audiobook, sometimes I will speed up. Like, if it's at, like, one time, I'll put it at, like, 1.25 times speed, just to, like, get some information, but I'm on the go. I want to finish the book. But Katy Bentz's delivery, the way she, like, emphasizes things, the way she flows in her acting, no, I turn it down to one times speed. Because I wanted to hear those fluctuations in her voice. I wanted to hear how she pauses and how she derives a character from the written word of Rosiee Thor. This is one time where I will put an audiobook at the right speed because I want to hear Katy Bentz's acting skills. And there was a good amount of acting in this book because it is Katy Bentz. It is Katy Bentz playing Steph in this role. And I thought Katy did fantastic. I've listened to a good amount of audiobooks in my time. There are some stinkers out there. There are some serious stinkers in terms of audio readers. Katy Bentz is not a stinker. Katy Bentz is a star in audiobook reading, and I hope she does more skills in that. Like, I hope this leads to more audiobook reading because she's great at it. She's actually fantastic at reading audiobooks. Couple bad things before I go into what this is. By bad, I mean, like, hey, set your expectations where this is, okay? First and foremost, this is around teenagers. Like, this is the central marketplace is teenagers, okay? This is not for 32-year-olds. The prime demographic is teenagers. With that being said, in a lot of teen novels, they like to use the same word over and over, and Rosiee Thor definitely loves the word falter. She loves the word falter. Falter is in this book many of times. But as an artist myself, there are some things that I go to that I'm sure you say, like, oh, that's an Adam Evil thing. Like, oh, he loves Enlightenment on FL Studio. Yeah, I do. I keep going back to it. Sue me. And same thing with Rosiee. You know, if she wants to keep using the word falter, who cares? It doesn't matter because the rest of the book is so amazing. But that's one thing. That there's a lot of falter in this, okay? The other thing is that we're centered around teenagers. There's a lot of messaging about seeking help in this book. A lot of messaging. In terms of, like, they go over an organization that protects trans community that is homeless because of their parents. There's a lot of messaging behind that. There's a lot of seasonal depression where you can seek help. There's a lot of, like, you need to seek a therapist because you're feeling this way. There's a lot of, like, hey man, there's options out there. And as someone in their 30s, I'm like, yeah, I know, but it's not for me. It's for the 13-year-olds, the 14-year-olds, the 15-year-olds that are going, like, through this experience of being trans, coming out to their parents, not feeling normal. This book is for them to send a message like, hey, this is a good story, but hey, also, like, this is me, Rosiee Thor, talking to you. You can seek help, you know? So see it and out. Yeah.
Sorry, apologies. So basically, are you, like, saying that it's when she's saying about the organizations that kind of, like, to help trans people, is it specifically, like, actual organizations that exist in real life, or is it, like, alluding to the fact that if you are trans, there are organizations that can help you, in just, like, saying that, kind of sending a message saying you can get help if you need it?
Yes. I don't think it's a real organization. It might be. I didn't do my research on the organization that they put out. I can't even remember from the top of my head what it was, but at least there's options. Like, oh man, like I didn't think about that, you know? Or even like how Izzy came out to her parents, you know? There's even a line in there that Izzy says, "What kind of lesbian are you?" to Katy Bentz. Goodness, Steph Gingrich. I can't differentiate the two. But like, you know, what kind of lesbian are you? And Steph is just like, the one that likes girls, you know, like, because even in Steph's mind, it's just a normal lesbian, but Izzy is a much more complex lesbian. So there's that. The third and final thing I'm going to say in terms of set your expectations. If you haven't read this yet, because it's for teens, because it's romance, it doesn't go too sultry. There are some parts where it's a little bit on the horny side. A little bit. Just a little bit. There's a little bit of like that little tease was like, we touched lips at the right time. And as she caressed my skin and I felt her touch, I was like, okay. I know Rosiee, what she's doing is like, you're writing to teens that are just like insane on the hormone demographic, like insane on it. And now you're going after like teenagers who are going through like the LGBT community while also being horny. You know, it's like, I get what Rosie's doing here. Like, she's really going after her demographic, but you know, just that's the third and final thing I'll give in terms of like, set your expectations here. She uses a lot of falter, which is fine. I'm just letting you know. It's fine, just letting you know. There is a lot of like, hey, seek yourself help, but that's because this is for teenagers, you know, teenagers who don't know. And that's a great message, but just so you know. The third and final thing, it's a little bit on the horny side. I want to bonk her on the head with a baseball bat, like, hey, stop. But I was like, okay. No, it was a great story. So good things, great things about this book. Loved it. Loved the story. I thought, here's what I love about authors. They can just put down ink on a paper and we just see an entire world. And Rosiee Thor, the way she explores Steph's and Izzy's story, the complications behind that, the gaslighting, the toxicity, but still the love together, it's so magically put together in terms of just words on a paper that I'm very impressed with how Rosiee Thor dealt with such a complex issue, a complex relationship within this boundary, right, of Life is Strange. It felt a lot of Rachel and Amber, that type of toxicity where they're horrible for each other but great for each other at the same time. And I'm not going to say what the ending is for this book because I want you to read it, but there is like a lot of times where you're just like, you don't know who you're rooting for. You don't know, because it's just such a weird dynamic and it's just so well put. The other great thing I think about this book is that I think it flows really well. I think the entire ending, everything kind of ties itself together. There's no questions needed. I think where we got to the story, I think it was necessary. Everything that we explored in terms of like how we got to Haven Springs tied everything together really nicely. And Max and Chloe are mentioned. Just mentioned. Yeah. They're in there. They're in there. Max and Chloe are mentioned. They are very much in the story. They're important. Also, certain decisions were made in Life is Strange 1 where the real canon started to come out, which is another thing I want to say about this book. You will read the story. And the more you think about it, the fact that Steph is in Haven Springs means that the Bay had to be sacrificed. And I won't say why. I want you to read it, but like you're reading it and I couldn't help but think, I'm like, wait, So because Steph is in Haven Springs, the canonical ending for Life is Strange 1 is that the Bay is sacrificed. Like you'll have to read it and just find out like why, but like how she ended up in Haven Springs. I'm like, so the Bay was sacrificed, you know. Also, in that story, like yes, Max and Chloe are girlfriend and girlfriend, so they are in a relationship. So, that's all nice. I'm going to spoil it. I don't care. They're in a relationship. Well, it's sweet.
Yeah, because because they do that with the Vicelli series essentially, because they do ship Max and Chloe together, and it. But that fact, definitely seems to be.
There's actually another Vicelli Easter egg in this book.
Oh really? Oh, that's nice.
There is. Here's the I'll let you finish, but I will say this about Rosiee Thor. You can tell she went through all the sources. She played Life is Strange. You can tell she read Vicelli's comics. You can tell that she's a fan of Life is Strange. Like this isn't like I've read a lot of novelization of like Halo and Gears of War. Where it's just like, I don't know if you know the lore. Who knows? Blah blah blah. Rosiee Thor is a fan. I can say that. Like there is different Easter eggs hidden around the book that I'm like, oh, she knows this series. But yes, there is a Vicelli Easter egg in here.
Yeah. Well, Emma Vicelli was the same as well, because she was very much a big fan of Life is Strange as well. And about having had a history of drawing as well. Like she came from the same roots. And it's interesting that obviously that they've shipped Max and Chloe together, because they did that with the comic series. And they've done this with the book, as you said, and that seems to be more of a Square Enix decision, if anything, because
I think
Donut has never specifically done that in the first Life is Strange, and we know where the kind of like developers really ended that story and weren't really, necessarily kind of wanted to go back and go beyond that as well. It seems to be like a Square Enix thing of having carried on this way of thinking. But no, it's interesting you give me those insights, because I'm hoping that, well, I'm trying to pick myself up, but like, next week I'll try and pick it up, and then I'll mainly the audiobook, and then obviously I need to slide into Katy Bentz's DMs and ask her to come back on the channel to kind of talk to me about doing this as well. Because obviously it's interesting, because like she's not necessarily acting like a voice actor. She's obviously doing, channeling her inner David Attenborough at this point and becoming a narrator. It's like, it's two different kind of fields. You have the voice of Steph, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be a great audiobook narrator. But
this was also a lob up for Katy Bentz, because the whole story is Steph's perception, right, of things. So I thought, like, while she's reading, she is narrating some things, but she's narrating through the thoughts of Steph, So I don't know. I really like this book. I gave it a 5 stars on Audible, and I meant that. I didn't just give it 5 stars in terms of like, just to help the album. I mean it. I think it was 5 stars. Like, I really do. In terms of like who this book is made for, it's not made for me and you. Let's just put it that way. It's not made for me and you. But in terms of like where this demographic is for this book, 5 stars straight up. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. It's a 5-star for me personally.
Yeah, it's as I said, like, this is the thing why I haven't picked up yet, because I know that Steph's story isn't necessarily made for someone like me. It's a young adult novel. I kind of like looked up Rosiee Thor's history anyway, but before kind of like when we found out that she was writing the book, and it's like with Rosiee Thor kind of like talking about the trans stuff. Like I will never experience that, and it's like, but I know what trans people go through. Like it's almost like 98% of the world is like against you, like and. I've always had this kind of thing with like, how trans people are kind of like stemmed into culture war conversations at the minute in terms of news and stuff. They're very much like picked on by large proportions of people, and they make up less than 1% of the population. It's like 0.1% or something, or even like 1%. They make up less than 1% of the population. It's like, they can't even like go to certain places in the world because they're vilified and hated so much. But it's like, kind of like have this kind of story with what Rosiee Thor's doing, and then kind of like, as you said, with the organizations giving kind of like avenues of places where people can kind of get help where and when they need it, or if they need it. It's kind of like really helpful for that. And obviously, I probably will, as you said, probably touch on the horny side of things because it's a young prose novel. But
I said, there's some descriptions of like skin touching. I was like, stop. I was like,
yeah.
It was fun though. It was a good read though. Like, it was a good listen.
like my plan is to hopefully pick it up this month, and then we'll try and do a full review on it, because that's why I kind of wanted to do as a topic at some point. But I wanted to kind of have you do your early impressions here. But I will.
I will say, like, one last thing about, like, I say horny, but there is no. If you're worried about, like, oh, is there going to be like weird like love scenes that I should be worried? There's no love scenes in terms of that. I want to just like put it out there that, like, no, like Rosiee Thor didn't like put it out there, and you're not going to feel weird for listening to it. It's just more of like teenage dating, makeouts, kind of thing. Like, we've all been there, So there's no weird love scene they're going to be uncomfortable with. It's just more of like, okay. It's like, okay, because like my wife watches shows like Outlander, Grey's Anatomy, and other, I can't remember the other one, where I'm just like, okay, it's very, those types of shows, I'm like, okay, here we go again. I just like walk in on her watching, I'm like, oh, watching porn again, are we? She's like, it's not porn, it's Grey's Anatomy. I'm like, okay, that's how you label it. But yeah, no, there's no.
It does kind of like cross that fine line, doesn't it? With like, because
it does.
I
don't shame her in the way. I'm just like, oh, porn are we seeing?
My thing with Grey's Anatomy is like, I know that they kind of like spoofed on it in South Park before, and I know the concept, but it's like, I remember watching it very briefly because Camilla Luddington was in it, and she was Lara Croft in the rebooted Tomb Raider series.
I forgot about that. Yes.
Mm-hmm. And I remember like just watching one clip of it, and it like became really almost, I don't know what it was, like she just became really steamy and started making love with this person. I was like, hang on. I was like, whoa.
Yeah, it goes from 0 to 100 real quick. But that's one thing. Like, if you're listening to this and you haven't listened to the audiobook, I'm like, am I gonna feel weird? I'm like, no, there's no like weird stuff. There's no like the weird love scene where you're gonna be like, oh my god, they're really going out of this. Like, no, it's just like they made out, or like Izzy will touch like Steph's arm, and she'll be like, I love the way she caresses my skin. I'm like, stop. I'm like, it's very much like teenage love kind of thing,
Yeah, see, it's interesting you say that, because like for me to ask, like, if I asked Katie that, she wouldn't find it weird narrating it, because like I remember saying when we talked about the kiss scene in True Colors, and I was like, you and Erica Mori were really close, and it's like, and did you feel like kind of like, the kind of the professional atmosphere of the set and Det 9, etc., like how they kind of set things up, you'd have been fine. And then she's like, yeah, but, we did kiss. I was like, hang on a minute. Yeah. I was like, wait, what?
I remember that. I was like, yeah, we just kissed. It's no big deal.
And I was like, oh, because I know that when they did, I think it's because of the facial capture that they had to do. That's why they did it. Because like when they did Life is Strange 1 with Gabriella and Serena, they didn't kiss. They would just move close. And then they didn't, then they did the computer animation, but that wasn't facial capture. That was just mocap that they did. But obviously this was full body performance capture. So I imagine when they made them kiss, it was like, so they could get everything as perfect as it was. But it was like, it was a surprise to me when she said it to me, because I was like, I completely thought it wasn't even going to be a thing. But like for her to narrate it, she probably was just like, as it is. But like obviously for us, me and you, it's like we're reading it as the kind of thing where it's like we're not the target audience of it. So for us, it's a bit like, you're like, all right, okay,
exactly. I'm just like, okay, but no, I thought it was really well put. I thought the story was fantastic, and I thought it hit the demographic in just the right ways. I thought it was a great story. I think it's a great pickup to read, even if you're just a Life is Strange fan. I think you're going to find evidence that Rosiee Thor is very much a Life is Strange fan. I highly recommend this book if you haven't already. Listen to the audio if you want to go on, with Katie's performance, and also give it a rating and a review if you haven't already, because it does help the Audible algorithm. So I would say do that too.
Absolutely. As I said, we'll come back to this audiobook / book later this month. I will pick it up because I want to listen to it, and then we'll do a full review, because that's why I very much like let you just do early impressions, but I imagine there'll be a lot to be said. And I'll probably pick up the audiobook first, then I'll pick up the book afterwards to read. But we'll do a review later this month, hopefully. Fingers crossed, all things said. But anyway, we'll move on from that, and we'll move into our main topic. A little bit late on this, but I've noticed it on the Don't Know Twitter page, so I kind of want to talk about it. They tweeted on the 24th of March, which was today. We celebrate the 8th anniversary of episode 2 of Life is Strange. From the junkyard to the dormitory rooftop, this episode is one hell of a ride, right? Question mark. So the kind of episode is, this part of the main topic will just be talking about episode 2 from Life is Strange 1. It's not episode 2 Rules, unfortunately, the greatest episode of all time, but we're going to episode 2 Life is Strange 1. And I believe in the previous episode, we did allude to the fact that in the scrapped episode that we had, Adam and I had very interesting feelings on episode 2 Rules, which after when I read all the tweet comments, they were all positive and stuff, I was like, oh, I was like, me and Adam are definitely in the minority here. But generally speaking, let's talk about episode 2 Rules, Adam.
Episode 2 out of time.
Episode 2 out of time. I never forgot about rules. And anyway, episode 2 out of time we can talk about. Do you want to start?
Yeah, I thought this was, I wanted to say a bump in her
He's
butt.
had his true feelings.
I think that it all like came down to one of the greatest endings we've ever gotten from a video game. Like, I thought the ending was fantastic. However, everything leading up to it was just kind of like, okay, here we go. And we kind of have to do this episode narratively to like build context, to build tension, to build character relationships. This is a building block sort of narrative right here, because, you know, we get to know Max's powers. We have to go into the jukebox thing and find out where the cockroach landed. And it's like, okay, we got to do this whole spiel. And then we have to go to the junkyard, and then we have to find the stupid bottles. And I'm like, okay. And then we have to go down the train tracks and have a little talk. Well, oh no, Chloe's stuck. Oh, you got to go get Chloe unstuck before she gets smushed. Okay. And it's just like, oh, and then Chloe has a gun, and we had to find out about Frank. And it's like, okay, I get it. Character development, I understand. But man, I'm not a fan of the entire episode. I am forgiving of it because it is narratively necessary for this episode to exist. However, it's just like there's a lot of filler in this one, but it leads up to a good ending, great ending, if I may add, fantastic ending. But man, there's a lot of filler to this one. I love it as a narrative, though.
Yeah, it's an interesting episode in all things considering. Like, this is one of the episodes I didn't get to review. And just thinking about episode 2 out of time, it's like, as you said, it's like, because the first episode really picks, like, you have to think about it in the first episode. We don't really get huge context, character building between Max and Chloe. Like, because obviously when they meet, it's like, we just get reunited with them. It's like they have their own history, but it's like, now we need to kind of layer that relationship in this episode 2. So it's like, episode 2 is like a little bit of a, after having a really kind of like big, fast steam burner into, you know, in terms of like a consistent episode 1, you kind of have to like shift back into gear 2 and like go a little bit slower and start moving forward. Because like, as you know, there's like a big emphasis on Kate Marsh's story, and kind of like, it's just, it kind of like leads you to kind of like little red herrings about Nathan, about Victoria, about the Vortex Club. It's got its own powerful meanings in terms of the themes that it's covering, but the central part of the relationship of that entire episode is Max and Chloe. Like, and you spend a lot of time with them because, as you said, we have this newfound power. Then we're talking to Chloe about it. You're trying to convince Chloe like you actually have it, which you can use it. You kind of have like early signs of like messing with time and what it's going to have repercussion wise. And then on top of that, you have like, you know, as you said, you get to the junkyard, which is like, you know, we find those bottles. A bit more easy in the remaster collection, but, you know, like, you know, we start to find those bottles. I think it's got one of the most iconic scenes by far, which is obviously the train tracks. Walking down that. That's like, I think it's very fondly remembered for that one scene alone as well, because it's a really iconic scene that they filmed for it.
Oh yeah, of course.
But I think like the main thing is character building in this. It's like, it's character building. Max and Chloe, you have to like really reiterate that point. And I think that because it does that, it can kind of make it feel a little bit slower now. And especially in hindsight, if you go back to it, for me, it's not the strongest episode out of those 5 episodes you play in the first Life is Strange, because, you know, it just hasn't necessarily, for me personally, aged as well as the other ones.
Sure.
And then obviously the finale is fantastic, and it was like truly one of the great endings for the series, ending episode moments for the series. I just love the fact that they took your powers away, and like when you get on that rooftop and you realize the stuff with Kate's history, like, oh man, I should have paid attention to that, or I should have read something, or I should have like really tried doing a lot of it.
Yeah.
But it was interesting because, as you said, like we take a character like Kate, and it's like she, in most games, she would have been like a throwaway character in terms of like they were just had as a side character, but they actually made her a central part of that episode. It kind of reminds me a little bit later on when we get to Life is Strange 2, and you have Jacob becoming a big character in episode 4. Like, you never would have expected that. When you saw Jacob in episode 3, you'd be like, oh yeah, Cassidy might have taken a bit more, Penny might have taken a bit more, but they took Jacob instead, and they were like, we're going to make this character a bit more bigger in the 4th episode in terms of like another story. And I did that with Kate Marsh. If you looked at all the characters in episode 1 of Life is Strange 1, you probably wouldn't have assumed that Kate was going to be the one that's going to massively like take a big role in like another episode, but she does. And obviously we love Day. We miss Day. We want Day back on here at some point, hopefully. But yeah, it in itself, it's a very interesting episode nonetheless. I don't think it's aged as well as the other ones, but still a very good episode.
Oh yeah, no, I think I agree with that last statement you just said. Like, it hasn't aged as well, but it's still Life is Strange 1. I still think it still belongs in Life is Strange 1. It's definitely not forgettable, but I think it just hasn't aged as well. Is all.
Yeah, it's an interesting. I don't know, because like when I saw all those replies, I was like, okay. I was like, I have a very different opinion on this compared to everyone else. And when me and you were talking about it, like, yeah, we're like rules, rules. I keep saying rule. When we out of time, it's like I was like, we were both like, yeah, we kind of agree with each other at this. I was like, oh. Feel like in the minority here, but generally speaking, it was an enjoyable episode. It just felt like you had to, as I said, you had to shift down a gear, because the first episode was like, oh, this is great, and it's like go on momentum, but it's like we need to kind of slow down the pace here a little bit, because we need to kind of give you a context here and we need to build for the next couple of episodes in terms of building the Max and Chloe relationship, feeding you a little bit about Kate Marsh, and obviously that was a big moment for Day, and it also led to Kate coming back in later episodes for fans who really enjoy that character. But it was generally an interesting episode now, and especially 8 years on, kind of like reflecting back on it, I still feel like kind of like, you know, torn on my complete feelings of it. It's got one of the most powerful mental health messages, if anything, like for any episode of the series, like that fact that there's that, you know, like that shot of like Max talking to Kate on the roof, and like she's just standing on the balcony. It's like damn, like, you know, you think about how important mental health is. It's like that was the episode for them.
Yes, I highly agree. It was more the ending of where it all led up to, and especially in the diner where you had to like choose to take a call from Kate or not. And if you didn't take that call, you know, you're on that roof, and then Kate puts that in your face, like, when I needed you the most, you didn't answer the phone. And it's just like, yeah, man, like, how many times in our lives have we not taken a phone call where we really should have, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, that was like it was really, as I said, it was a very clever episode in terms of the way that they set up the Kate story. Like, when you go into a room, you can basically spend a bit of time, like, acknowledging who she is and kind of, like, learning things. Or, for example, if you leave and then you get to the rooftop and you have all those choices, it's kind of on you, because it shows that you weren't interested in the character, you weren't interested in her, and you weren't interested in helping her. It's like it's the one episode where illusion of choice doesn't feel like it exists, because if you F up at that point, she jumps off the rooftop, and it's like, you know, that's kind of like those moments where it's like, it's a real eye opener. It's like, oh shit, you know, shit. Yes. It's like, I was at fault here for this. Like, I should have really taken that attention. As you said, when you pick up that call, it's like, and it's the way it's done cleverly. It's like when, like, you know, Kate's calling, and then Chloe kind of interferes a little bit, and she's like, oh, Maxie, like, you know what, you know, you don't have to like pick up the call. It's like, you know, you're spending time with me, it's like, blah, blah. And it's kind of like putting you in two positions that it's like, you should really take this call. And it's like, just to kind of see what's happening with Kate, because you just bumped into her at school. She's obviously not in a good place. you kind of need to help her and show support. But in itself, it was just very well written. It was very well written. It was very well articulated. That part has really aged well for it. And generally speaking, like in terms of the overarching episode of the story, it feeds into it a little bit. It doesn't feed into it massively. Like each episode feeds into it massively in terms of progressing the main story along, like with the Rachel Amber disappearance and feeding this kind of thing. This one kind of just like trickles little thoughts in your head about Nathan as more of a red herring and also potentially Victoria. But I think like I wasn't kind of like duped at that point with the red herring of like Nathan. I was like, it's kind of like entrenching on me a little bit here. But generally speaking, it was a looking back, I really enjoyed parts of it. I just feel like it was, it's a bit of a slow burner. Yes. And it's like, it's not my favorite episode by far in any stretch of imagination in the first Life is Strange, but it's I wouldn't never say it's like, it's a 1 out of 5 or anything like that. It's like, it's still a very good episode.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, as I said, like it was Day's moment that it was really her episode, if anything. And she really, really,
she killed it.
Yeah, she did.
Maybe I shouldn't say
really
killed it. That poor choice of words.
It's a very poor choice of words.
Yeah, she nailed it.
She nailed it.
Yes.
You might say nailed it in the coffin there, but we'll allow you.
Oh God.
we'll allow nailed at this point.
Yes.
Where you keep digging yourself a hole here. No,
I am a white man in America. We just keep digging ourselves in holes and don't dig ourselves out. We just dig a deeper hole. That's
true. But no, yeah, it was Day's episode. This is the kind of these are the episodes that really make careers, don't they? It's like same with like when you look at this one and then compare it to like Katie stuff in Before the Storm. Those moments might not have ever happened if it had not been the voice actor who was like really doing the performances. And in another lifetime, this could have like been even bigger for Day in terms of like if Kate had gone back into another game or something like that. There was like a lot of there's limitless opportunities here for her, but like it proved really important for her, and it's still very important for her as well. But top marks for her on that episode. And I think like in itself, having spoken to Day, having spoken to Hannah, I think it was this episode was not necessarily just as important for the fans; it's also important for the voice actors. Like they've openly spoken about their own mental health issues, and like I think like this episode really like resonated with them. So I think like the toll it took on them to kind of do this as well, I imagine is like, I couldn't have imagined for them to kind of like talk about it. Like I was kind of like, I was really openly surprised by when we talked about that episode. It was me specifically with Hannah and specifically with like Day as well. Like you kind of was like, oh, it's like this really hits home more than you'd expected it to be. It's like, everyone says like, it's like, oh, it's okay to talk, and it's okay not to be okay, and etc. and all those kind of like those key buzzwords that people throw on social media. But it's like when you've like probably experienced it yourself, or you've been through like kind of like similar experiences, then you're kind of like living those moments. I think like that amplifies performances even more. Like I remember with because we were talking about earlier as well, the Amador interview that I did for Life After Strange. Amador was Esteban in Life is Strange 2. He was telling me that when he was recording the lines for Esteban, he was going to become a dad. His son was born. Like he was pretty much going to become a dad, and it's like he's now playing this guy who's been slain, and then his 2 young kids are kind of like on the run. And he's kind of like doing this, and he's like I was choking up doing some of these lines. It felt so surreal having my own little son now. And it's like, then this has happened and I'm playing this character. And it's like, and you're like, oh, that's kind of like, those are the moments that really make the performances stand out. And like, that's why Hannah's character as Max is seminal, and same with Day and stuff, because they've lived these experiences. But yeah, generally speaking, it was really great episode to kind of look back on episode 2. I really enjoyed it. I thought, as I said, I think it's just in hindsight, it's, because you've seen what happens. Yeah, like because you've seen what happens. It's like it's a little bit like a slow builder then, because it's like more at that point. You kind of like in subsequent playthroughs and like replay throughs, you kind of like spending it just learning more about Max and Chloe, if anything, and enjoying that part of the relationship, because you know what to do with what's going to happen with the Kate storyline. but generally speaking, like it was a very good episode for like a second episode, whilst filler, whilst kind of like, you know, substantially like character development driven, still very enjoyable nonetheless, and obviously sets up to a great third episode, very great third episode. But yeah, I felt it myself. I felt like we were talking about off podcast. We weren't even sure if we were going to record this episode because like me and Adam were talking for a long time. I came on very, very annoyed on this call, and like a lot of other kind of like personal experiences. I had an awful March. As people who probably follow this channel for a better part of however long you have, we went on hiatus last year at this point for 2 months because my dad died in March, and like literally that was like, you know, that was just a mind-blowing moment. That was like, it was so weird. I remember it as well that it happened like last year. Like we had recorded an episode of Hannah Tell. This was one when we were on ZenCast and you fell out the call after like 5-10 minutes.
Yes.
So it was like, it was just basically me, and I edited the entire episode on the Friday, like 2 days after we recorded. And then the Saturday, my dad had his cardiac arrest, and then he didn't pass away the Friday after. But it's like literally that one moment changed everything. Like the podcast stopped, we stopped episodes, and it's like, you know, and it's weird as well. Like, you know, I've openly spoken about my mental health and stuff. I've had a therapist for a long period of time, and I said to her like last month, it's like, this last month doesn't exist for me. March, it just doesn't exist, and I'm surprised I even got like a Life After Strange out in it. I'm surprised I got even half the StrangeCast episodes out of it, because like to get that level of motivation, it was like it just didn't seem to exist at me. Like it doesn't exist. Like, it's so weird for me to say. It's like March does not exist as a month in the calendar year for me now, and I don't know how long that's going to be felt for me, but it's going to be a long time for me to even think that. But like, yeah, when I'm talking about episode 2, it feels quite fitting that it's in that month now, in terms of like its own themes, and then like my own kind of like loss as well. But yeah, it does do numbers on you, man. It really does. Like it's really difficult sometimes. I was just saying to Adam, like, you know, it's just difficult. Like when you put as much time as you do with this channel and stuff like that, and the numbers don't massively come back, then it kind of does make you feel disheartened. Obviously, you do it as a fun kind of hobby, passion project, etc. You have to do that because no one's ever going to have millions of subscribers. But it's like you kind of a bit like, you know, you're a bit like, oh, you know, is it worth it? Is it not worth it? And we've had other people say we should talk about other things as well. And I've been trying to plan projects to do in between. It's just finding time as I turn 30 very soon. Heaven forbid. Oh dear God. No.
Yes.
No, but it's, as I said, like it's a very. This was one of the more poignant episodes, especially for theme wise. I think like the other one that really compares to it is the beginning of episode 4, where you do the Chloe Price decision, where it's like, you know, do you turn off the machine? Do you keep her on? You know, the euthanasia kind of theme. Like that's the other one that really hits home with like this. But this was the one that was like, oh damn, like, you know, and yeah.
No, like you said, like it's just these kind of episodes really hit hard, and that's why, you know, I love Life is Strange. It's because it's not afraid to speak on mental health. It's not afraid to speak on the weaker sides of, or at least what American society sees as the weaker sides of humanity, being struggling to tell somebody you're not okay. You know, going into that episode too, like not taking that phone call in the diner. There's a lot of times where I'm just like, you know, there's a lot of times where I will take that phone call, like from a certain person. I'm like, I have to, not even out of pity, but it's been many times in my life where I wanted to make a phone call to a friend and I just didn't want to bother them. You know, I didn't want them to think that like, oh, well, you know, like if I call them, oh, what if I get them on the wrong time? This was when I was really young, you know, and I didn't know that like people were there for me, or people are still there for me. But I always take that call whenever I can, you know. But and I tell people all the time, like, hey, if I don't answer the call, it's either I'm at work and like I didn't feel my phone in my pocket, or I'm sleeping. You know, that's the only times I'm not going to pick up a phone, because like it's either I didn't know that you were calling or that I'm asleep, you know. And I try to stay true to that promise. But, you know, there's so many times where a lot of times people are out there and they need somebody to talk to. I needed people to talk to. And it's good to know that like someone's out there for you, you know?
Yeah, it really is. Like the thing with the phone thing is it's so true, because like one thing that really annoys me is like I probably wouldn't own a phone if I had the chance. I'd probably never own a phone.
Oh yeah,
because I don't like the social media stuff and everything else with it. But I do own one, and it's like when someone rings me, I pick up. And one of the biggest pet peeves I have is when I ring someone and they don't pick up. And I usually know that the phone is within radius of something, and they just don't pick it up. It's like the current generation of people, and even like the generations before, their eyes are glued to phones. It's like the fact that the main purpose of the telephone, which was the original incarnation, even the 80s one, if you've seen it and stuff, it was to pick up and receive calls. And most people don't even use it for that. And it infuriates me so much, because it's like there's always someone else that will need. You never know what in the last. Like as I said, like, you know, last month was really difficult for me. And like my dad's death was like a period of 10 days plus. I went through hell in every way, every sense of the word. And I don't really usually who do tweet about stuff like this, but I did say, like, you know, on his funeral day, the 1 year anniversary, I said to him, it's like, it just felt so surreal seeing it. And I just put like a tweet underneath where I said, like, it's like, you know, I would give everything in the world for a 30-minute conversation with my dad. Like, I would give everything in the world, because I can't remember the last conversation I had with him, because the unexpected circumstance of him passing away the way that he did, I was like, I would give anything for the opportunity to talk to him again. And it's like, that's what infuriates me with people. It's like, you know, if someone rings, it's like, pick up, that you'd never know what will happen next. And you'll live with like so much regret if you don't have it. And it's like, I think about it like so much. And I think about it even with like, when I saw the statistics at the beginning, that thing where I tell you about Spotify with like the people who are non-binary, it's like, I try and stay as much as humanly possible away from like cultural conversations now. I stay away from like people who like have a vendetta against, you know, anyone who's trans or whatever. Cause I don't care. I don't care about why you don't like these people. It's like, these people want to live in peace. It's like, are they bothering you? No. Yeah. It's like, let them live their life the way that they want. It's like, why are you hounding them for who they are? It's like with people saying like with you know, oh, the celebrities come out and they've come out as gay and stuff like that. It's like, why is it a big deal? Well, seeing as like most of the world accepts people who are just normal as heterosexual, whatever, like with relationships. Imagine telling someone that you're gay, and it's like, and just seeing their reaction. People have been like disowned by people. Yeah. People have like had to like flee from their parents who've like tried to kill them and stuff. It's like, it's not as simple as just, oh, why have they come out? And it's like, oh, we expect that. It's kind of like, it's a big deal for a lot of people, you know? It's life changing. And it's like, that's why it's like so important for like these kind of things. Like
it's who they are. It's like, you can't control your skin tone, Adnan. And I have Jewish blood in me, and there's a lot of times where I share that, like, yeah, I am, you know, partly Jewish. And there's so many people that will say, is like, oh, you know, that and they'll say some weird stuff about the Jews I won't even say on here. But just like, and same thing with trans people. It's like, they didn't choose this. That's just who they are. In the same way of race, it's just like, it's don't choose who you are, you know? It's like, just live your peace, go play Xbox, leave them alone, or PlayStation, you know, either one. That one you choose. That one I will judge you over. I will go on console wars every day of the week. But
console wars still seems like such a trivial conversation compared to what other people do with that. It's like exciting,
but
that's more.
That's the thing with humanity. They just want to divide for some reason. And just like with console wars, with culture wars, race wars, sexuality wars, like why are we wasting all this energy on, you know, dividing people when we can all just be spending this energy on Life is Strange? Why not?
Exactly.
You know? No, it's just, you were saying?
No, it's just weird. It's just weird, like in hindsight, the way people act. It's like, even like the people who, like, you know, go after trans people and stuff. It's like, they've probably never met a trans person. No. And it's like, that's even like more like reflective of it. It's like they like put all these labels on it and stuff like that. But it's like, as I said, like my own experience in terms of like the way that I've had to live my life and everything else like that. It's like, you know, it's just difficult with like, in terms of the conversation. This is why like this episode opens up so much, kind of put into context with episode 2 of Life is Strange 1. It's kind of puts in context because it opens up conversations about those kind of like personal experiences that people have had. Like, you know, and it's like, it's there's such a stigma around it, like, especially with like, you know, men as well, like having that kind of thing of like, oh, you don't cry in front of someone, and oh, you have to kind of have this kind of like upbeat shoulder and this macho masculinity about you, because that's what society has driven us. It's not told us about men being, you know, I've seen some daft takes. This is what like when the internet really drives me crazy. I've seen with women, it's like, oh yeah, you know, I can't see a man cry in front of me. It's like, why not? Yeah. You're human. It's like, and to prove this as well, I remember seeing this one about this woman on TikTok where she's like, as a woman, she's like, as a man, would you prefer a woman approaching you and talking to you and asking you out or anything like that? And all I could think of is like, and I'll say this to anyone who's listening out, if you're a woman, the next man you see or anything else, or any person you see, compliment them. You will live rent free in that man's head for the next 10 years, because all he'll think, because how many compliments have you had off a woman? Just out of context.
Every day.
Your wife doesn't count.
Oh, besides my wife?
Yeah.
You know, I don't think they really compliment me because I pride myself on being married. So I guess like women don't really want to be, and that's the thing, like a compliment doesn't have to be sexual advances. Just has to be.
I'm just saying my compliment.
Yeah, nothing, because I think there's this stigma of this, like, if you compliment somebody, there has to be a catch, there has to be a string, and just like it can be just like a friendly conversation, you know, like in the same way, like I can compliment a woman, I can compliment a man, I can compliment a non-binary person, and it's just like, hey man, I just hope you're doing all right. Like, that's it. It's like, but you know, now a lot of white men don't really take that initiative in this country. There is a certain epidemic of people in this country that just take it way too far, and I hate those people, and I will always drive them down. Not hate, I shouldn't say that, but it's like, it's the whole point of this conversation. We don't hate people, but it's just kind of like, man, just be married and be happy. Goodness gracious. But I don't know. I'm just built different, I guess.
Yeah, you are built differently. And just to prove a point as well, my last part of the conversation, you will live rent-free in that person's head for 10 years. Yes. Because 10 years ago, a girl once complimented me whilst I was standing in the queue at a university shop, saying that I had a really nice T-shirt. Mm-hmm. And out of all the things you can remember, I remember that. And it's like the most trivial thing ever, but that's an example of it where, you know, it proves that where there's a huge kind of like divide of like the way that we see, well, from men to women to non-binary people, the way that people compliment people, the labels in society are thrown about. It's pretty hard. But I think we can wrap up here in terms of the episode thing. I hope you enjoyed the main topic. We'll do spread the arts here. Do you want me to go first? Do you want to go first? Yeah,
go first. You get it, King.
So I will recommend now, having played it for like pretty much a long period of the weekend and week and everything else, that which is a Resident Evil 4 remake.
Yeah,
it is out. Very much recommend it. It's a, you know, I know some people are hugely blown away from it. 10 out. It's got like loads of 10s and stuff like that, and it's mad reviews it's got. It's a good interpretation of a remake for me, especially from like Capcom. It's you know, Nick Apostolidis is a wonderful, wonderful performer as Leon. Obviously, we talk about Nick as well. Nick plays Frank in Before the Storm. He plays Charles in Life is Strange 2 and Captain Spirit. Great actor. He's Leon in RE2 remake. Fantastic, thoroughly deserved performance. There's some really great performances. Some interesting perceptions of the interesting takes. On certain characters. They've changed a couple of things. It's obviously a remake. Ada Wong is a very interesting performance.
Really?
I think you'll find it. Yeah, I think you'll find a lot of people are very much divided on this one. Out of all the performances, The Merchant and Ada has very much divided people.
Oh, I haven't looked at anything on this game because I'm waiting for it to drop on price a little bit, but I'm not looking at it because I want to go in fresh with like a fresh take. So it's good to know, actually, like going into it.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I want you to play it for yourself, because I feel like you need to play it through and then enjoy like a lot of what you see. Because I think if you play the first RE4, I spent so much time on it when I was like last towards the end of March, just playing this game, and like it really took my mind off a lot of things. But it was really enjoyable. But, like the Merchant interpretation, I think a lot of people aren't keen on. The Ada one is like a very. I'm not gonna trash the actor. I have no interest in doing that. I just don't think that the decision was right for what they did. because like purely for the fact that when we had Jolene do Ada in RE2 remake, she was wonderful. She was really wonderful. And the tone that they set with this actor in RE4 remake, who I believe she's the voice of Ada in the live action, or she's Ada in one of the other interpretations of Resident Evil, in the Resident Evil series. I can't remember off the top of my head. She does something else in it, but I just don't think it fits well in terms of the way that the game flows. Her voice acting just doesn't hit the same level as like Nick's or Ashley's or any any of the other people who are representative of each character. I just don't think it hits the same level, because my mind at that point is like, if you're bringing Nick Apostolides back as Leon, it just makes absolute sense to bring Jolene back as Ada, because it just makes that just seems like a winning combo, because it worked really well in RE2. And I don't know why they didn't do it either. I think there was like, I've seen rumors and things floating around where it's like it was down to the fact that I think like Capcom didn't contact Jolene, and it's like like Jolene joined a union and Capcom doesn't like working with union. There's all kinds of like rumors and stuff, which I need to kind of like dig into a bit more and find out actually where this kind of goes. But I just think it was a big miss. Like Jolene is a wonderful actor. Like, we've already spoken about like Karen, like she got a BAFTA nomination just based on that one character alone. That's like a mind blowing kind of like role to just win off that. But then on top of that, she was great Ada as well. So nonetheless, like, as I said, a very interesting game. And if you're an RE4 fan, I'm a huge RE4 fan. That's Shinji Mikami's masterpiece, that game. Like it's a 10 out of 10 for me, the first RE4. Like, and it was such a divisive entry for people. But it was like, for me, a true masterpiece in the horror genre and the horror action genre, however you want to define it. This is an interesting interpretation, because this follows what they've been doing at RE2 remake, if anything, like, and they've really tried to do that. And RE3 remake was a bit flat for me. It wasn't as it was a little bit of a disappointment that I don't know where things could have like gone as badly wrong as it did there. But RE4 remake kind of like put it back in that same bracket as where RE2 remake was, if not better. But as I said, recommend it if you are looking for something to play.
Hell yeah. I'm going to go from something to play to something to listen to, and it's not music. My spread the arts is I would say my top three in that top three podcasts I listen to is the Nintendo podcast. I really like it a lot because it's with two content creators I really like, that being Wood from Beat 'em Ups and Bob Wolf from Wolf Den. And they made a podcast together called the Nintendo Podcast, where they just talk video games, Nintendo stuff. But their most recent episode they had on was they were at PAX East, and they were there with Gerard from The Completionists, but also in the G4 debacle. And it's a 2-hour episode of how this sweet man, Gerard from The Completionists, Gerard made a great video about trying to get all the eShop games on Nintendo, and that video is great as well. Like, fantastic. And so talk about how Nintendo is very anti-capitalist, and they will just try to put roadblocks in, try to get their games. It's just insane, and how game preservation needs to be a thing. But the whole episode, it's 2 hours long of just Gerard's journey from that video that he made that blew up in numbers, how people like left his side after the G4 thing. He talked about Frosk and that whole debates of like, was it the right time in the right place? But when is the right time in the right place to make that kind of rant? Where Gerard's going now. I thought it was a very well-meaning episode. I thought it was very, very sweet to listen to because they're all friends. And it's just, the great thing is that Gerard had so many interviews like connecting to him. Like his business email blew up after the video, but he only chose 2 places to do an interview. NPR and the Nintendo podcast. Those are the only 2 that he accepted. So it was a great one. I love the whole podcast in of itself, but I thought that episode that just came out with Gerard from The Completionist, really well said. So while you're playing Resident Evil, and you don't care about the dialogue, just pop that Nintendo podcast in. It's a good one. I think it's nice.
No, it's a good recommendation. That I do check that out. Don't put it over the dialogue, RE4. You do want to watch remakes, see cutscene. Yeah, very good. There's as I said, with RE4 remake, the interpretation actually is a little bit better. I'd say that.
Oh yeah, I can imagine.
And they remove some of the I'm a pure believer of, like, even if some things are dated, I think that they still work, even if society has changed. But I think
you tried to look up the ladder, didn't you?
No, I did not. Well, do you know, like, even the fact, like, even when that was a thing in the original RE4, like, that was like when the way she reacts, it's kind of like that incentivizes on, like, that's really meta for me in terms of, like, kind of like is reflective, like, you know, that why you're looking up there anyway. It's kind of like,
yeah,
you know, come on.
Yeah.
And it's like, I feel like the way that they kind of like, they strip some of Leon's, like, kind of like the way that he speaks and, like, some of the flirting that he does in, like, the later parts of RE4. And it's like, it's not as bad as it is. It's like, I'm like, come on. It's like, you know, this is why when I'm always a bit worried about even, like, remakes of, like, MGS, for example. I'm like, you need some of those kind of, like, lines. It makes, it's authentic to what it was, like, you know, and it's indicative of Japanese culture as well. Like, it's interesting you said that thing about Nintendo there as well, because it's like, are Nintendo anti-capitalists?
It's more of, you'll have to watch Gerard's video. It's a 20-minute video. That's another one I'll do for Spread the Arts. It's on the completionist. And all he tries to do is he tries to buy all of the eShop games before the eShop closes on Wii U and 3DS. And there's so much red tape to buy their games. It's, you know, there's red blocks, but like roadblocks in a way, but the amount is absolutely insane, especially when he tries to buy the DLC for certain games. It's just mayhem. And this man is ready to put down 23 grand to buy 23 grand straight to Nintendo. And there's so many roadblocks, and it's just insane. So that's another video that's really good to watch.
Yeah, because I will check that, because, like, Nintendo's the way that Nintendo works is really interesting, because, like, obviously, like, anyone knows the history as well. Like, they weren't, like, you know, always about video games. They had love hotels, for example, in Japan. Their business was very different, but, like, like, a long part of histories of Nintendo, especially, stands from the video game crash, the famous video game crash of the 80s. Because, like, if you look at any Nintendo game, they have, like, the gold star on it, the gold circle. It's a Nintendo authentication thing. They had that on every game since 1980s because it's the gold standard for Nintendo. It's like saying that whilst, you know, E.T. bombed for Atari and caused all that mayhem, and you had Superman 64 and everything else that comes out, when you have that gold pristine label saying that this is Nintendo seal of approval, like, it's almost like saying you're buying an iPhone before an iPhone was the thing. It's like, you know, you're buying Apple instead of buying a Huawei or something like that. It's kind of like saying that it's differentiating yourself from the products. Like, and they're not necessarily about game preservation either, like, especially with, like, the Japanese market. They kind of like, that's what they kind of like do, the thing where it's like, here's a Pokemon game and here's another Pokemon game years later, and we'll kind of keep moving on to game shops. And even, like, same with Sony as well. Sony's, again, Japanese publisher, and they were like, yeah, we're going to shut down the PS3 store. And it's like, oh, wait, no, we're not going to shut it down yet because people got outraged. And they're like, we will shut it down at some point. But it's like, you know, game preservation is a hard thing to do, but I think, like, it's going to, there's nothing that's sacred on the internet, especially with, like, how the way internet works. Like, for example, like, if Facebook won't exist one day, even though then there would be an argument to preserve Facebook. And they've done it with, like, Twitter, for example, when Obama was in office. You can see the archives of his tweets. And you're trying to archive it because it's part of history that, you know, what the president's tweeting.
There's another Nintendo episode where they talk about the morality of emulation in terms of games that Nintendo doesn't sell anymore. And it's like, is it moral to emulate? And it's like, it shouldn't be moral, but this is the only way we can. They have, the past 2 or 3 episodes of Nintendo have been, like, really good to listen to in terms of just, like, you know, like, there's some filler episodes. Like, there's one episode of Nintendo's like, which one's the sexiest Pokemon? And it's just, like, so stupid. But there's other episodes, like, where they talk to Kit and Krista, and they were originally Nintendo ambassadors. Like, they were heads of, like, putting out the Nintendo ambassador program. And it turns out that Krista was the one that dropped Bob, like, personally dropped Bob from the program. And she came on the episode like, I'm so sorry about that. Nintendo made me do it. And the way that, so there's some good ones and also some stupid ones. So I just recommend the entire podcast in general.
Yeah.
I really like it.
It's a good recommendation, as I said, and the morality as well. Yeah, it's like, what do I not pirate? What do I do pirate? Do I support this? Do I not support that? It's very we could be here for a while. So on that note, I think we'll finish it here, because I think otherwise, as I said, we'll be here for a long time. But
yes,
I do hope you enjoyed the episode. If you did, as I said before, please do drop us a subscribe, turn on notifications, like, and share with your friends. Helps you keep up to date with our content, helps you support our content as well. And also, StrangeCast is available on all podcast services. You can check the video version out on Spotify. You can check it out on Apple Podcasts, and you can also check it out on YouTube as well. If you're listening via those podcast services, we have a video version on YouTube as well. One more reminder as well, that we do have the interview with Trey Hutch on the channel from Life Up Strange. Hopefully, in due course, when my mood and stuff picks up, and we will try and up the content and stuff like this on the channel. We'll, as I said, fingers crossed. But in the meantime, as I said, hope you enjoyed this episode. Let us know what you think about episode 2 of Life is Strange 1. Do you agree with us? Do you not agree with us? Do you think we're daft? Let us know in the comments. It's down to you. Be nice, please. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the episode. We will see you soon for next episode. Until then, guys, take care.
Later.